This is Neil Ratner Rock Doc here on WDST Radio Woodstock with another episode of This Week in Rock, stories from the soundtrack of our lives. On October 12, 1979, Fleetwood Mac released the double album Tusk. And although the album sold 4 million copies worldwide, the band's record label deemed the project a failure, laying the blame squarely with Lindsey Buckingham, who had been adamant about creating an album that was nothing like their previous smash success, Rumors. So today, I thought I'd tell you a little about Fleetwood Mac and the making of the album Tusk that you might not know. And as usual, a little background first. According to Buckingham, for me, being sort of the culprit behind that particular album, it was done in a way to undermine just sort of following the formula of doing Rumors 2 and Rumors 3, which is kind of the business model Warner Brothers would have liked us to follow. Mick Fleetwood decided it would be a double album, and when Warner Brothers turned down Fleetwood's request to buy a new studio to make the record, the band used some of their royalties to construct their own studio. But as Lindsey Buckingham, producer Ken Calais, and Stevie Nicks explain, each of the band members had their own idea about the time of day that they wanted to record.
I was not really a nocturnal animal. Mick was very much a nocturnal animal, and Stevie still is, really.
We would tend to go later and later. Next thing we'd find we went till 5 in the morning, and that meant we wouldn't start till 5 in the afternoon. And then if they went till 7 in the morning the next night, the next thing you know, we were coming in at midnight.
It's a kind of a comedic dynamic that began to emerge between at least me and Mick. You know, I'd say, I'm going home, and I'd start to walk out to the parking lot, and Mick would physically come out and drag me back in. And I'd say, well, I'm going to the bathroom, and then I'd just walk out of the studio and get in my car and drive home. That was the only way I could get out of there.
We had some duplicate tapes, so whoever wanted to stay up till 4 in the morning and do whatever that we knew would be erased later, but I couldn't take the chance that they would, some master idea that we had, so it was unbelievable. Rumors was not much of a party, in my opinion. There wasn't a lot of drugs and drinking. I think the second album with Lindsey's antagonizing position, I think it made it more tedious, and so people started to drink a little more, and then if they had too much to drink, they would counteract it with some stimulant.
Beautiful child.
You know, you smoke a joint, then you're too stoned, and then you have a hit of cocaine, and then you're too nervous.
Beautiful child.
And then you have a shot of vodka, and then you feel like you're a little drunk, and then you start over. It's an evil circle.
Even with a custom-built studio of their own, Lindsey Buckingham still pushed Mick Fleetwood to let him record some songs in his home studio. Fleetwood acquiesced, but told Buckingham that the other members needed to be integrated at some point, which they were, although 3 tracks, The Ledge, Save Me a Place, and That's Enough for Me, were recorded solely by Buckingham. Producer Ken Calais commented on Buckingham's obsessive nature in the studio, saying he was a maniac. The first day I set the studio up as usual. Then he said, turn every knob 180 degrees from where it is now and see what happens. He'd tape microphones to the studio floor and get into a sort of push-up position to sing. Early on, he came in, and he'd freaked out in the shower and cut off all his hair with nail scissors. Buckingham seemed to be infatuated with bands like Talking Heads, and he was desperate to make Mac relevant to a post-punk world. Bassist John McVie commented that the album sounds like the work of 3 solo artists, while Mick Fleetwood said it was his second favorite Fleetwood Mac studio album. The song Tusk was the first single from the album.
Nobody ever really told me what it was about, so I don't really even to this day know exactly what it was about.
Well, I call that one Boys Gone Wild. I remember Mick and Lindsey were talking about Tusk in a sexual nature, you know, these long horns sticking out, and how they thought that was kind of funny, and I thought that's kind of immature.
We had the Tusks in the studio, and they were, you know, big 12 feet tall tusks, one on each side of the board. So when we would come into the studio, it would be like, how is Tusk doing? Because sometimes the board would go down. And when it did, it would go like, Tusk's down. You guys might as well go out and order lunch or something because Tusk's not working right now. So it was like that became a big deal.
Mick Fleetwood.
The track, Tusk, came out of a riff that Lindsay always used to play at soundcheck. And I came back and I said, well, what about putting a 100-piece brass band playing the riff?
And we're all like, okay.
The band recruited the University of Southern California's Trojan Marching Band to play on the track, and a mobile studio was installed in Los Angeles Dodgers Stadium. The recording session took place on June 4th, 1979, while John McVie was in Tahiti, and he's represented in the video by a cardboard cutout carried around by Mick Fleetwood and later positioned in the stands with the other band members. The Trojan Marching Band's 112 members set a record for the highest number of musicians performing on a single. And during a game at the Los Angeles Memorial Coliseum on October 4th, 1980, Lindsey Buckingham, Stevie Nicks, and Mick Fleetwood presented the Trojan Band with a platinum disc for their contributions on Tusk. Okay, let's listen. Fleetwood Mac with the University of Southern California's Trojan Marching Band and Tusk.